Hi, everyone. So this is going to be too late for many of you around the world. It's the middle of the night where a lot of you are. But I thought I'd jump on and record a video and just sort of go over what happened today and over the last couple of days. Actually, there's a couple of updates I'd like to give. This will cover DV2020 and DV2021. I'm always challenged by people, no matter what I talk about. I can guarantee someone will complain that I'm not talking about their situation enough, and that I'm only talking about other people. It doesn't matter which way I do it, I'm always damned. But oh well. So hi Joel, you're first in, and thanks for those of you that are jumping on there. Appreciate you coming on. Okay, so it was a very busy day. I unfortunately had a very busy day myself on my own work, my own professional work. Remember, I do this as a hobby. This is not my profession. This is just something I do to give back to the community. I benefited from a DV lottery visa myself, and so this is something I do. But unfortunately, I have to pay the bills, and I have a full-time job to deal with that, and that was very busy. I lost some kilos too. No, I didn't lose any kilos. I do the best I can. But okay, so let's talk about the lawsuits. There were 2 lawsuit hearings today for a start, and so they were very interesting. The first one that was held today was in the Gomez case with Judge Mehta. And that was interesting. I couldn't attend the I couldn't live tweet, I couldn't attend live, but don't tell anyone, but I did actually record it for my own personal use. I won't publish it, I promise. And I also recorded the later video as well with the Jacob case. This was so that I could replay it for myself and understand everything that was said. And I think there were some people live tweeting. You're welcome, Sergio. I'm glad to see you're on. It must be late where you are. But the meta, actually both hearings today were a little bit different to what we'd seen in the past. Meta, I think, has frankly had it up to here with some of the doublespeak the government are talking about. And there was a particular question that he sort of trapped York with today. Benton York is the attorney working for the government, and today we heard Benton York and we heard Cleland Welton on our side. We didn't hear from other lawyers on our side, which I think was what Mehta preferred, and I think perhaps what had been agreed by the lawyers. And it was better that way. Actually, it was better than the last hearing. It's if there's a way to do it, having 1 or 2 voices speaking on the on the hearings is better, in my opinion. And Welton for us has been good. Charles Cook has been good. Be more than happy to hear from him. But in general, I think the other lawyers probably should be taking notes and passing information to to one person to be asking or answering questions. That would be the ideal, as far as I can see. So hold your questions for the moment, Benjamin. I see you've put a question in there. Just hold your questions for a moment, because I want to recap. I think this is an important thing to recap about what's going on. There are some important developments here. So anyway, Mehta has not made a decision today. That's clear. He pressed York on a couple of things. He really trapped York into. There was an interesting exchange between Mehta and York, where Mehta asked a question for which he already had an answer, and wanted to trap York, in my opinion, in the wrong answer, which is exactly the trap that York fell into. He answered unwisely, and was immediately contradicted in his position. Although he waffled his answer a little bit, York waffled his answer. Mehta immediately took a position and said that he disagreed with York's position. That's not a good thing from a lawyer's point of view. And basically that point was overstanding. If Meta was saying if he did nothing, would the selectees with visas lose standing? The ones that were issued in September of last year, would they lose standing? Because there's been all sorts of cases and instances recently where the government have argued both sides of the same argument. They've said, well, in one case they said, well, you didn't file early enough, so you've lost your chance. And in another case they've said, well, you filed too soon, so why are you getting all worked up about this? I mean, it's just the doublespeak is getting annoying, and all the lawyers are noticing that, I'm sure. And so Meta was trying to head off a particular thing about standing. If you don't have standing, if you're no longer being harmed by the proclamations because your visa has expired, so you've got no right to challenge it, or because Meta just lets it expire, then effectively people lose standing. Losing standing meaning they've got no way to challenge the proclamation because they've got no axe to grind. I'm trying to think of a way that would make sense in different languages, but they would not have an argument to make because they're not being harmed anymore because the harm is past, right? And Meta does not want that to happen. He didn't go through this position to put people into that position. So Chuck Cook this evening on his Facebook call said, that's it, game over. I mean, that's like, Meta has to do something. And I think he's right. I think that's the right perspective. So that was one important point. The other important point was the confirmation of something that I actually had heard about yesterday, I think, or day before yesterday, where the government lawyer, York, referred to the fact that shortly before today's hearing, he was informed by the Department of State that 2 cases have been issued visas, have been issued NIEs, national interest exceptions, DV cases. Now, I was already aware of one of those cases. I know the person that was issued an NIE in that case is based in Europe. Was from the Netherlands, was interviewed by the Netherlands embassy, and has been reading my blog for well over a year. So I mean, this was a case I was somewhat aware of, and she reached out to me firstly explaining why she had such an early visa expiry date, which was actually this Saturday. She was explaining how that happened, and that was of interest to me. I couldn't remember exactly what had gone on in September that had caused that for her. But then shortly after she emailed me about that, she then informed me about that the embassy had reached out to her saying that they were trying to work something out with Washington, right? And trying to work out a national interest exception, and they were negotiating it with Washington at that time. Now, she doesn't know exactly how that happened, so I've confirmed with her this evening, and I appreciate her. I won't mention her name because I haven't asked for permission to do that, and I had been very cautious, and I explained why, about saying too much about this yesterday. I did not want to say anything about this yesterday, so basically, I'm not going to sort of give too much detail, but suffice it to say, she has no reason to get a national interest exception. She has not got a sort of a family reason, U.S. citizen, family in America or anything like that. She's got no work reason. She's well educated, yes, for sure, but not a doctor or anything, that would be interesting from a COVID point of view. There's no actual reason why she should get a national interest exception. But yet, when she asked about her visa situation the other day to the embassy, they came back and said, yeah, we're actually working on that. We're trying to work something out for you. So this to me is evidence that the Department of State is trying to do something, and they're almost going down the list, it appears to me, of cases which were imminently about to expire. I'm not talking 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now. I'm talking about they were going to expire this weekend. So the 2 cases that they've helped were going to expire on Saturday and Sunday this weekend. So by Monday, it would all be over for those cases. And the Department of State took extraordinary action with no national interest normal basis to make sure that they were not affected. Now think about that for a moment. I think this is important. Why would they do that if they were just happy that everyone that's been issued the visa is just going to lose their visas, right? They wouldn't do that. That's the answer. They wouldn't do that unless they were trying to sort of do something important. And in the hearing, in the Gomez hearing, there was also another point that was reiterated. We've heard now in 3 different cases, the Seaborg case, the Gomez case, and also on the Jacob case. The lawyers in each case have referred to the fact that the government have committed, I heard the word committed today, committed to the review process on the proclamation 10014 completing by the end of this month. Now, the end of this month is February 28th, obviously, but February 28th is Sunday. So February 26th is actually the last day, because I think it would happen on a weekday. It doesn't technically have to. They could actually do something at the weekend, but I believe that February 26th will be the sort of the final date. So basically, the government lawyers in 3 different cases are saying that the review about Presidential Proclamation 10014 will be completed. A decision will be made by the end of this month, i.e., in my view, by Friday the 26th next week. Now, knowing that, and knowing State know that, right? Department of State know that, then it makes perfect sense that they would be looking at the cases that expire between now and that date. Because if they're about to make everybody else safe in terms of DV2020 visa holders, sitting in various places, then it would be unfair to let the people who are about to expire just go ahead and expire. And that's why the Department of State spent a couple of days negotiating with the embassy to make sure that my friend in the Netherlands was taken care of, and one other case with a couple of family members. So I think these are important pieces of information. I don't want to get into predictions. I've told everyone before, I don't want to get into predictions, partly because some of you guys just don't understand what the word prediction means. Predictions mean that you're not certain about something, you're guessing what will happen based on evidence, based on informed opinion, not based on plucking it out of the sky like some people I see. I think this is going to happen. I think this, not like that. I mean, I'm informed. I know what I'm talking about, and these are informed opinions. But even then, some of you will then turn around and say, "Well, you said this, or worse yet, you promised this, or the government promised this." And promises are not being made. This is not what's happening. Predictions imply, some sort of uncertainty, and we've seen uncertainty bite us in the ass before. So, I don't want to be too predictive. But I do believe that there is something going on, right? Now, conversely, we saw 2 pretty hairy hearings today. If you watch the Jacob one, that was actually really quite aggressive, quite testy. Curtis at some point got pretty emotional and worked up. He's tired, but he's also emotionally invested in the people he's fighting for, and quite right. I mean, I wouldn't want a lawyer that didn't give a damn. How could you not care about some of these stories that they're involved with? So yes, absolutely, he's emotionally invested and showed it, and lost a little bit of composure, but he's human. Why wouldn't he? And on the other side, the government lawyer also was sort of testy, and there was some testiness with with all of them, and Chen even got sort of a bit snappy at one point. So there is an argument being made on both cases. But let me explain to you, and people sort of say, "Oh, look how hard," and this is something I have to say does annoy me a little bit. I see lots and lots of Twitter comments about, "Look how hard the government are fighting. Look what they're doing. They're arguing. Biden's as bad as Trump and everything else." Look, let me explain it this way. You might be the world's greatest soccer player, right? and your hometown might be Manchester City. I don't know. Well, pick your hometown, right? And so maybe today you're playing for Manchester City. You're the world's greatest soccer player, but you get transferred. You're on now the opposite team. You're playing for Liverpool now, right? Whatever the teams, doesn't matter. The point is, you're still going to work as hard as you can to not lose. You're still going to say, even when you're playing against Manchester City, okay, I'm on the wrong side. My favourite team is Manchester City. I've supported them all my life. But it's more important to me to get the win, no matter whether, no matter whether that costs my hometown their cup chances or whatever, right? And that's what we see from the lawyers. The lawyers all fight because they don't want to be reversed. I took a look at Judge Seaborg's resume, you could call it a resume, which was a historical account of all of his cases, how many times he won cases as a lawyer, how many times he was reversed as a judge, and all these sort of things. Lawyers actually take that stuff very seriously. Judges, lawyers, they want to know how many cases they won, how many times they've been reversed on appeal, and that sort of thing. It's very important to them. It's a way of measuring their effectiveness, right? And so I don't think it's surprising at all, and I'm amazed when I see some people, including lawyers, express concern that that the other side's lawyers are fighting for, fighting for against us, right? Well, of course they are. That's their job. It's like they're football players. They're doing what they're paid to do, right? So it's not surprising, and it doesn't mean that Biden is sitting there phoning Kimberly. Sorry, I've forgotten her name, but the lawyer in the Jacob case. Joe Biden is not phoning her 10 minutes before the hearing saying, you argue for me. You make sure you do a good job. Of course he's not. He doesn't know anything about it, right? He doesn't know a damn thing about any of this going on. She is just doing her job, trying to make sure that she wins her arguments, etc., trying to argue the case on technicalities and everything else. She's, that's her job, and she's doing it as best she can, right? So, so don't be surprised about that, and don't try and assume that it shows animus towards you as immigrants. It does not mean that. The lawyers are acting on behalf of Biden, yeah, sure, but not personally, and not, they're just, arguing technicalities. And this is why about a week ago I was stressing the need to do a deal. I do see signs from the government lawyers, and from the government, that they are willing to try and help. And we need to explore, in my opinion, more actively ways that we could find, of helping people. But I think the government are actually going to take care of it anyway. I also think we're going to win on probably all of the cases. So, my confidence level that we're going to be able to deal with, DV2020 visas, is very, very high, off the charts high. I'm sure that we're going to be able to deal with those. My confidence level that that we'll return to some sort of normality on DV2021, however, is restricted by the COVID realities around the world, and this is why we're going to need for the Annunziato case to continue, and hopefully get a judgment from Judge Seaborg. If he says, "I'm not giving you anything," he's not taking down 10014. He's not going to, he's not going to take any involvement. That's a problem, because we're going to need Annunziato to cover the whole class of DV2021, and to get some sort of order from him to preserve the visas, because we are not in a position where we have enough time. We don't have enough time for all the processing. So, we've got Annunziato, which is primarily, as far as I'm concerned, I'm focused on the DV2021 aspect of that. There is also an aspect, one of the classes is DV2020 visa holders. I think DV2020 visa holders are going to get taken care of by the government anyway, and they're being argued in the Gomez case, so Judge Mehta might do something there. And Judge Chen is taking a very lively and active interest in the Jacob case, which is being well argued, and it's 2,000 people, but that is not a class that's going to predict everyone. It's just going to treat the 2,200 people as a class, I believe, or work for them. So anyway, that's where we stand on those cases. But the most important thing I've heard over the last couple of days is this position that the government took in helping a couple of people out with the NIEs. Now, I just want to cover briefly what I mentioned earlier. Why did I not say anything about that yesterday? Well, I was very cautious because here's what I thought might happen. I thought, we know that the government lawyers are monitoring the Twitter world information, right? We know that. And so if I went on and people started talking about someone getting an NIE approval in the Netherlands, I was a bit fearful that the government lawyers would jump on that and say, well, hang on a minute, we're arguing that you can't give NIEs at the moment. So if you go and do that in a couple of cases, that's going to compromise our position, and therefore we're going to stop you doing that. We're going to tell you to not do that. And the last thing in the world I wanted to do was interfere with at least one case I knew of that was getting that help at the time being. But now the government has admitted, if you like, or revealed that that's happened. They're on record as having said that. It's not me talking about it, and so I'm not compromising anybody's chances there. And actually, the NIE for that case, as we heard today, has been approved. The other interesting thing about that NIE is, as I mentioned, there's no reason why that person should have got the NIE. There's no justification for it other than being a DV2020 visa holder who is about to time out, who is about to have their visa expire. And the NIE specifically exempted them from PP 10014, 10143, which is the extension, and the Schengen area ban. Okay, that last point is very important too. It exempted her from the Schengen area ban. In reality, she's sitting in Aruba. She's actually not affected by the Schengen ban, but nevertheless, the NIE also exempted her from the Schengen area ban, which shows that that's possible too. Now, we need to take that information and now build on it. Charles Cook posted on Twitter today that he wants everybody to ask for NIEs. I had a conversation with Jules earlier, Julie, you're on. I was just checking. I had a conversation with you earlier, Julie, about whether he was trying to get evidence of denials, and I said to you earlier that I don't think he is. But after the 6 p.m. Facebook thing, I think that is his strategy. I think that's what he wants. He wants to, as he put it, overwhelm them with requests and get the denials if the denials come through. I don't think that's the right strategy, in all honesty, because I think the government actually did something for the people that they did work for because they were expiring this weekend. And if anybody was expiring next week, I think they would do the same thing again. Okay, so if you happen to be expiring literally by the 26th, then yes, get a conversation going with your embassy about the NIE. And you can refer to the fact that in the Netherlands embassy worked with Department of State, issued a national interest exemption, and they did not have to prove, in that case, any family relationship, any work relationship, or anything else. Right? They didn't have to make a case for it. It just got granted. Right? It was just taken care of. So in Charles Cook's Twitter earlier, he said, apply for the NIE if you think you're eligible to do so. And a lot of people ask, what do you mean by eligible? Normally, there is an eligibility level that needs to be reached, but there is no eligibility level in this case that needs to be reached. It simply is a matter of your visa is about to expire, but they will not take your case seriously if your visa is going to expire in early March, right? Because you're not in trouble yet. And I think, back to what I was saying earlier, I think that they internally at least believe that those cases are about to be taken care of. You could take the opposite view and say, okay, the review that is underway might end up with the government saying that they're not removing PP 10014, But then why would they go to the trouble of giving an NIE to a couple of cases expiring this weekend? Because if everybody's going to be subject to PP10014, then all of them, thousands of cases, are going to expire in just a couple of weeks' time, right? So why would they go to that extra trouble? So I think it telegraphs a little bit of good news. I'm hoping that you're understanding all of this. I know my English accent throws people, and possibly I speak too fast, but I'm hoping this is making sense to people. And I am connecting some dots. Let me just say again, I'm predicting and connecting some dots. I'm using a little bit of common sense, if you like, or information that I've got to arrive at an assumption. It's just my assumption. I've got no other inside confirmed information to say the government are going to, remove the ban, or do anything else. But I think they're going to do, personally, I believe, they're going to do something for the DV2020 holders, either go with more national interest exemptions, right? Or the ban itself will be taken down. Now, let's talk about DV2021. If the ban itself comes down, does that mean all the world is happy for DV2021? No, it doesn't mean that at all, because we still have embassies closed. We've still lost most of the year. More than half the year is gone now. The earliest interviews that we could have would be scheduled in March. March interviews are March 2NLs are for May interviews, right? So, we would be badly running out of time. And at the moment, embassies are responding to people saying, we're not scheduling you because of PP10014. That comment would stop, but then the question would be, well, is the embassy open or not? So that's going to be tricky. So it's not a done deal for DV2021, and that's why we need to continue the pressure on an NCRTO. I am so grateful that the lawyers, particularly the Charles Cook, Greg Suskind, Jeff Joseph, Aaron Hall, I'm so grateful that they had the foresight to file that case when they did, and to start it from the very beginning as a class action, effectively pro bono for everyone else. There's a few people who've paid for that, but it's a very small number. I'm grateful that they did that early, right? That they could see what was coming. That they took the view that they had to fight, because that's buying us some time. This whole thing is a very slow process. I wish we'd got a TRO or a PI early. We didn't. But if you've listened to these hearings today, and if you've listened to other hearings, you can tell how complicated this is as an issue. It's not an easy thing for the legal construct to just remove PP10014 or blanket agree NIEs. It's just complicated. The government have the best way and the best, easiest way of making this right, so that's why I'm hopeful that they still do that. Okay, so just to recap, visa holders, and Susan, let me just recap, since you were late. What were you doing? Like, why are you so late to the meeting? And I'm being silly, of course. Quick recap. There are a couple of cases that have been given NIEs, national interest exception waivers, that will be traveling into the USA before their visas expire this weekend. Sanju says, I'm almost fluent in English. Thank you. I've been practicing a long time. Very good English. So there is movement there. There's also been movement in the Jacob case and the Gomez case, and so there's a lot of stuff going on. This day was very, very busy for immigration stuff in general, not just these cases. But there is some possibilities going on, and so let me scroll back up and just see if I can. Rita. Of course, you're in America. I was going to say it must be really late where you are, but it's not too late at all, is it? So welcome, Rita. I hope you're staying warm. Have you seen, by the way, Texas is having snow and freezing weather. A lot of America is under freezing weather at the moment, but Texas has managed to screw it up so badly. They've lost power for hours and hours and hours. And people, I mean, I saw someone whose fish tank had frozen. The whole fish tank had frozen inside their house. Stupid. Sometimes America just makes you wonder. They can send people to the moon, but they can't keep the bloody lights on, in 2021. It's unbelievable. And that partly, by the way, is because Texas are running their own power grid as opposed to the national grid. Stupid. But there you go. Okay. Yeah, you thought that Jacob filed for a class action, but not too sure. Yes, you're right, Synthesia, they did. But the judge today was talking about the class being limited to only the named plaintiffs, that would be the class, so that they wouldn't individually have to do everything. Now, I'm not sure that that's what Curtis Morrison and Raphael Arena planned or were going for, but that's, I think, Judge Chen's perspective. He does not want to give a blanket class in that case, when it would be somewhat duplicative of what he thinks is happening in the Enunciato case. So, there is a certain amount of delay being caused by competing cases here, and also by the government's actions at the same time. The judges are watching what each other are doing, right? Judge Chen is watching what Judge Seaborg is considering. They're probably both watching what Judge Mehta is considering. There is interaction between the cases. In one sense, it's helpful. In another sense, it's been a delaying factor, I believe. Yes, you're absolutely correct. I only focus on DV lottery. I'm a previous DV lottery derivative. I took interest in that in 2013. Since 2014, I've been doing nothing but DV lottery. I'm not qualified, or I don't have the interest in any other type of visas. And I have a full-time job, so I'm not a lawyer. So I don't, I don't pretend to have any input on those other things. I just, even if I know, I just basically say no, I don't know. So I can't answer those questions from you, Kabir. I'm sorry about that. Raj, welcome to you from Nepal. So there is no sense to ask for an NIE if my DV 2020 will expire on 19th of March. I would say to you, Mo, despite what Charles Cook said, I slightly disagree with him. I would say don't ask at the moment. I mean, there's no harm in asking. You're not hurting your case by asking. But it might piss off the embassies, right? So I would just wait for a few days. It'll be Friday tomorrow, a week tomorrow, so 8 days from now, we're going to have some sort of announcement, I believe, on the PP10014. And there is time for you to get an exception before the 19th of March, if that's the way that things work out, right? But a lot of things will get clarified over the next week or so. And to me, it doesn't make sense to just wildly shoot off and ask for an NIE. If, on the other hand, you want to try and support an effort that Charles Cook may have in mind of getting a rejection, then by all means try and do that. That's your call. Julie, so I'm worried they will wait for the end of the month for the ban to get rescinded. If nothing is done, only have the 1st and 2nd of March. Yeah, yours is on the 3rd, right? You can actually enter on the day of your visa expiry. It's not the day before, it's the day of your visa expiry. I thought you were the 3rd or even the 4th of March. The reality is, Julie, the Gomez March 18th date is now going to be pushed back, as I understand it. The Jacob case is being scheduled for a hearing on March 4th for a status update. They don't want to make decisions in front of the government. The judges don't want to. They don't want to overrule what the government is doing, because that's somewhat risky for them. That involves them putting their reputation on the line, their judgment on the line. They could be appealed. They don't want to do that when they think the government is about to make up their minds. It's bloody annoying, that the government's lawyers then say things like, well, you've waited because we've been told these little nuggets of information before. You'll remember that we had serious reason from a lady called Oliviera, I think her name was, who is within the Biden administration, that said that they were going to look at 10014 and 10052. She talked in slightly broad terms, but it was clear she was talking about those two cases, saying that they were going to be removed on Immigration Day, and they weren't. Immigration Day was delayed anyway, as we know. It was delayed from, I think, the 29th to the 2nd. Then the 2nd came, and they didn't do anything about those two things, and so we've been dangling a little bit. We've been kept waiting a little bit by the things that they've promised to do. Now they're making another sort of promise. They've made a promise that the review would complete by the end of the month. And so it's a pain in the butt, but the reality is there isn't a faster plan for this, Julie, and so I think that's just going to be what's going to be. You know, I saw somebody on Charles's on Charles's Facebook today or YouTube. Someone said, "Should I leave?" No, absolutely not. You've waited this long. You're in Cancun. You know, stay there another week. I know it must be dreadful, but and I think the 2nd of March is your start date for work, isn't it? But no, I would say just, hang on if you can. Okay, Isra Svensk, I saw you were on Charles's live earlier as well. I recognize the name from, they answered one of your questions. So what do you think the likely remedy Meta would give? Is it true that he will freeze valid visas until final judgment so that they're not valid anymore to use by the end of the month? Okay, so there's two parts of that. And I thought Charles Cook answered your question pretty well, but he's looking at it this way. Judge Meta won't do anything that compromises somebody's valid visa, right? Curtis Morrison pointed this out on Twitter today, and he's absolutely right. I mean, they won't intentionally damage anybody's chances, right? And Meta was being very challenging with York today, the government's lawyer, to make sure that the action he takes in this freezing perspective isn't going to make things worse for people if PP 10014 is removed in the meantime, right? And so that's why there's this timing issue, the timing between the two things. That's why we're probably going to have to wait until the 26th. But what Charles Cook is saying is that the freezing of the visas is important because it means that without having to go back, he said this almost precisely, he said, without having to go back to the embassy, your visa will be preserved and valid. Well, that's very important because it means that you wouldn't have to pay fees again, you wouldn't have to get another medical. And so if that could be achieved, and Charles Cook thinks it can be, if that can be achieved, then that's very good. That will preserve the visas without additional costs, and and that would be useful. Pretty cold comfort, frankly, to someone like Julie, who's sitting there in Cancun waiting to enter and has already waited there 2 months. And there are others. I'm sorry, I refer to Julie, as a class for everybody else that's in the same position. There are loads of people like Julie. That would be pretty awful because that would mean then that she has to face going back home and, just a mess, right? So I personally don't want to see that option being implemented. But if that's the last straw, if that's the last chance we've got, then so be it. That's better than nothing. This has always been, since September, this has always been a difficult fight. Remember, we argued for issuing of visas even though the ban was in place and that the ban could be extended. We argued for the position we're in right now. And so this was always going to be a difficult fight. This is about keeping things alive. That's what we're doing here, really. So I hope that answers your question, Isra Svensk. Carolina. Good evening. People with visas issued in March have already had visas expire can request the NIE. No, if your visa has expired, there is no currently agreed path on how to fix your problem, right? If you didn't get a reissue in September, then we don't have anything for you yet, but they are still working on that. Okay, so they're still going to try and resolve that question too. What we're talking about at the moment is the DV2020 visas reissued or issued in September, who are about to expire. But Carolina, nobody's forgetting you, or cases like yours. It's understood that there are people whose visas either expired before September and for whatever reason they couldn't get a reissuance, or visas that were issued in September and have already expired in 2021 because people are on very short validity because of medicals, etc. So there is still some work. Nobody's going to forget about that. There's still some work to be done there. Okay. Psycat, thanks for all the selfless efforts. You're welcome. Small query: is there any age limit for getting selected in the DV lottery? No age limit. You see me? Do you think I'm old? I'm older than 37. Yeah, I am older than 37. You applied for DV 2022. Just understand your chance of selection, depending on the region you're from, Psycat, is roughly, for other than the Oceania region, your chances are worse than 1 in 100 years. Okay, so don't think of DV lottery as a plan. It's an amazing, lucky thing. It's not a plan that you implement. You know, it almost doesn't make sense to imagine you buy a lottery ticket, right, to win the cash lottery, the money lottery, and you expect to win. You hope that you're going to win $10 million. Do you go and see an accountant to work out how to pay the taxes on that and what you should do? Of course you don't. You wait until you actually win the lottery, and you should do the same thing in DV 2022. But good luck to you. I hope you win. So, all right. Yeah. So Shitan. So you're in the USA. You're going to apply for adjustment of status. Yes, you have to wait for the visa bulletin. The way it works is, let's say, I can't think of the numbers. I don't know the numbers, but let's say the number for your region is at 10,000 right now. If your case number is 10,000 or below, and you see that number has been published in the visa bulletin, then you can apply for adjustment of status. If, on the other hand, you don't see that in the visa bulletin, you cannot apply for adjustment of status, and they will reject your case for being incorrectly filed. And it can cost people their cases, because sometimes you don't get the rejection early enough to be able to resubmit at the right time. So don't do that. Don't apply early. And there is a thing called an early filing policy, which means that if we saw the visa bulletin published for May interviews suddenly included your number, then you could file immediately, even though it's not going to be actually current until May, right? You can file as soon as you see your number in the visa bulletin. So that gives you an additional 6 weeks or so, but you cannot file without your number being current. This is a problem for some people because the visa bulletin isn't moving as fast as it should do, because we're not having all of the consular processing interviews that should be taking place. Those interviews are necessary to drive the visa bulletin progression. We need the momentum going. So although they've moved the numbers a little bit, which helps adjustment of status, it's not moving as it should do. Yeah, he says he won't approve of denials. He says that on YouTube. Won't approve of denials. Not sure what you're saying there, Mo. Not sure. He won't approve of denials. Yeah, I think I think you're saying that Chuck is trying to get the denials. I mean, he thinks they're going to be denied, and I agree with him. They will be denied. The embassies in general are not going to approve NIEs in a blanket way until they're told to do so. And I don't think that's the plan the government have in place. I think what they want to do is give NIEs purely for the cases that are at risk right now, like this weekend and perhaps next week if there's any cases like that, but not beyond that. I don't think they want to issue 6,000 NIEs. Each one of them requires paperwork, etc., and specifics. So they don't want to do that. Yeah, and that's another good point you're making there, Mr. Naz. Thank you. I see you've answered a couple of questions accurately. The 90 days. There is a 90-day requirement before filing for an adjustment of status. If you've entered the country just recently, you have to wait 90 days. That rule has actually changed a little bit. It's not quite as powerful as it used to be, but nevertheless, you really shouldn't be filing before that 90 days. So if you entered recently, you have to wait the 90 days. Okay. Mo is saying you understand and it makes sense. Good. Okay, thank you. Judy Curtis says it's very likely we won't get anything until March 4th. My visa is expired by then. I think we will need an NIE. Yeah, I disagree, Judy. Watch this space. But he could be right. I don't know. I don't have inside information, as it were. I'm just putting 2 and 2 together based on the information that I did have, and trying to figure out the behavior, what the behavior means. Akaki himself. Is today the day when you tell us to send our documents to KCC? Oh, yes, that's the question. Been waiting for the green light for a while, I know. Oh, yeah, I hadn't thought about that question in preparation for today's live. So I'm worried about that, Akaki. I have to say, I'm worried about that. I think that KCC are still not properly staffed, right? They're not answering the phones. They're not responding to emails in all cases. They're not properly staffed, that's clear. They still are operating in a world of the pandemic. They're closed down. They're doing bare minimum operations. And so if lots of people suddenly send their documents to KCC, I think that people's documents are going to get lost. I've seen it happen before, and I'm worried it's going to happen this time. Having said that, I would prefer that people who are paying attention to people such as myself and some of the other people talking about DV lottery, that those people, I'd love to be able to give you the advantage to be able to say to you, Akaki, look, go ahead and get that in ahead of the flood of people being, submitting their documents, which will happen when KCC suddenly stand up and say, hey, we're ready for documents now. Please send in your documents. They sent in 2019, I think it was, maybe 2019, and maybe I get my years mixed up here. It might be 2018, but they sent a blanket request out to almost every case saying, please send in your documents. They got a flood of people sending documents, and they went ahead and lost most of those documents. And so I don't want you to be in that flood, right? I do want you to be ahead of that, and that's why your question is troubling to me, Akaki. I want to give you good advice. I don't want you to get lost because they're not ready to catch the ball that you're going to throw to them, the documents. I don't want them to get lost for that reason. I also don't want you to get lost because you're in a flood, a tidal wave of people doing the same thing. So it's a difficult call. It's a very tricky call. And I don't think I'm quite there yet. But you're going to have to also, use your own judgment. That's why I'm explaining the thought process to you, and decide, what you want to do. So I will continue. Please keep asking me about the green light unless you decide to go ahead and do it yourself anyway. It's amazing, actually, how positive in spirit the lawyers are when they have the foresight to assume the worst. Honestly impressive. Yeah, I know. It's really, I agree with you, Synthesia. I've talked before about how optimistic the lawyers are, and resilient and wise. They're positive. It's kind of a strange thing because one minute they'll be bitching about the government, and they'll be complaining about this, and they'll be sort of taking a very negative stance, which gets some of you worked up, and some of you just go down a rabbit hole of negativity, which I think is unwarranted. But at the next minute, they're very positive. So what I see is that these lawyers, they are convinced of their own ability to overcome issues and problems, and they're positive about that. They are optimistic and positive when it comes to that. But part of what they have to do is to create an argument, and therefore the negative stuff comes out. They have to have an argument. The problem is with having an argument is that when you argue with someone else, that person argues back at you, and that's what we're seeing in these lawsuits right now. The government lawyers are argumentative over trivialities, technicalities. And they're playing the game. That's the football analogy, the soccer analogy I gave earlier. They're playing their game. But I honestly think that some of the negativity that, just creates aggression between the two parties that actually isn't moving us ahead. Which is why I talk about making a deal. So there you go. Joaquin, I'd like to ask you, when do you think interviews for DV2021 will start? The big question. I don't know. That's my biggest problem with predicting where we'll get to in terms of case numbers. I don't know. I think what's going to happen, let me just take my current assumptions. My current assumption is that I think the government is going to do something about PP 10014 next week. That would be in time for that barrier to be removed, and the thing called Diplomacy Strong, which is the opening level of the embassies, hopefully will be improving. So, we would at least see some interviews happening at some embassies, I think, in May. I don't think we're going to see any interviews in April or March. I think those months are gone. So I think that we're going to see some interviews in May. But, I don't know for sure. It's just a guess. Sweet Grace. I saw a question from you on Charles Cook's thing today, I think, Sweet Grace, and I wanted to answer it. If you can think about what you asked today, maybe ask it again. I'll see if I can answer that for you. I can't remember what your question was, but I recognised your name. Okay, I'm going to try and skip through. The English is symphony for the ears at this time in the EU. Wonderful. I'm going to try and skip through some questions and answer a few questions fairly quickly. My dog wants to go play. She's literally, if I could turn the camera around, my dog is at my office door, and she knows every time, this time of day, she knows the light is failing and she wants to go and play with the ball. So I have to keep people happy, you see, and dogs too. Should DV2021 selectees enter the lawsuit? No, there's no lawsuit you need to enter at the moment. You're covered by Annunciato, or you should be covered by Annunciato. If the class action on Annunciato is denied, then we might add applicants to Annunciato. That would be how that would go. Let's say, suppose the ban is removed and DV2021 is with low case numbers. I don't understand the question, Pritesh. Nikki, seen you before. My visa expires the 10th. Should I wait until the 26th? I would. That would be my suggestion. I would wait until the 26th, sometime next week. But it's your call. If you want to do what Chuck Cook said today, which is ask the NIE anyway, and get the rejection, go ahead and do that. You may not get a rejection. Who knows? Maybe the embassy actually take it upon themselves to, rather than give you the standard answer, which is no, you're not getting an NIE, they might actually go to Department of State and maybe something will be worked out. But I think because yours is the 10th, they'll not be so keen to sort of, bend over backwards for you. You're welcome anyway. What happened in the Jacob case? Yeah, so it was an hour and a half, and I was watching the replay, and I mean, it was a lot of both the hearings today were a lot of very technical arguments being made, and so I decided I can't deal with explaining all of it that went on. It's just too much to try and summarize. But so I'm trying to deal with the sort of the higher level topics of what's generally happening. Alex, welcome to you from Cameroon. That's wonderful. How can there be global warming if Texas is freezing? So these are, I could give you the technical answer, but global warming so should, it's global, it's climate change is what it is. Hot places getting hotter and cold places getting colder, and hot places getting colder, and it's like the El Nino thing that we saw a few years ago. We didn't understand what it meant at the time, but it was a change of weather patterns that's really a problem. If you understand what climate change is, it really is a problem. Some people try to deny it's even happening, but it clearly is happening. It's a problem. It will, if we don't do anything about climate change, it'll make large areas of this world uninhabitable. It's a big deal. But I do believe that mankind caused it, and I believe that mankind have the ability to do something about it. So hopefully it will be fixed. After the ban, will KLCC starts programming based on the current visa bulletin or start from the October visa bulletin? Once they've reached a number, let's say they're at 10,000 now, that might have been reached over 2 or 3 months. Once they're at 10,000, everybody below that number is all the same. So it's not like they do October interviews and then do November and then do December. Wouldn't be like that. They would interview potentially any case number less than the number in the visa bulletin. Talked about the 2020, please rewind. Does the country affect the selection chances? I'm asking because I'm pretty full. Small country in South America. My uncle got selected. Okay. No, the chances of selection for the DV lottery is by region, not by country. There is not an allocation for a country or anything else. The only country effect that there can be is a few countries, and not in South America. There are no countries like this in South America. A few countries, such as Nepal, such as some of the other ones, Iran. There are various countries where so many people apply from that one country that they actually cut off the number of winners from that country. They stop selecting people from that country. That actually reduces the chances for people from that country. But they still have thousands of selectees. That's because they've got millions of entries. I mean, it's staggering how many entries they get from those countries. Good luck to you, Indira. Indira Stone, good luck. And that's a good point. Oceania has the highest selection chance of all regions by far. You're absolutely right. If you're in a couple, if you're a married couple and you're both applying, you have a massive chance of selection. I mean, it's almost a plan. It's almost something you could say, oh, I'll apply. Me and the husband will apply for the DV lottery. You apply 4 or 5 times, you're almost guaranteed to get it. It's literally like that. And that's purely because even though there's a very small amount of available visas in Oceania, only 800 visas, there's a tiny amount of entries, very small amount of entries. So that's why. Okay. Yeah, so I suggest she waits. Now, look, like I say, Charles Cook, I highly respect Charles Cook, and he said that people should apply for NIEs, but he's somewhat playing a game, and I don't think it's going to get you anywhere. But if you want to ask, you can. Okay, there's a question there from Ahmed. It doesn't matter about your specific case number. I can't predict the chances of getting an interview because we don't know when interviews will start. Mubarak, can I still submit my documents to KCC and the police report? Can you enlighten me more if I'm in a different country other than my nationality? You have to read the instructions. If you're asking me a question like this, it's because you haven't read the instructions. So the instructions make very clear that you might have to provide more than one police report. If you've lived in other countries for a period of time in the past, or if you're not in your own home country, etc., you might have to provide other reports. But you can figure that out by reading the instructions and then reading the reciprocity page for each country to find out whether you need to provide a police certificate. This is an important thing. I've just told people your chance of selection is like 1 in 100 years. In the Africa region, probably 1 in 200 years. If you take that chance and you choose not to read the bloody instructions, you're a fool, right? You literally are. This is a chance like once in a lifetime. Some people do win it twice in a lifetime, 3 times in a lifetime. Fine, I get that. But still, don't waste this opportunity because you can't be bothered to spend an hour reading the instructions. Read the bloody instructions, right? So, getting worked up. That did not have an interview scheduled. Okay, so the people in that position did have to wait for the Gomez case, and I think the Gomez case is now going to be delayed even further beyond March 18th. I don't know when the new date will be, but it's being pushed back. So it was discussed on the Gomez hearing today, but they're just trying to resolve the issues about the visa holders. Okay. Mubarak, okay, is this available in the visa bulletin? Nobody's, apart from if you're doing adjustment of status, nobody is being interviewed at the moment, Mubarak, so don't worry about your number, just, hang in there. AOS here in the US with a low number, AOS 8,000, will this VB progress? Yeah, so your real question here, Milad, is how quickly can an adjustment of status case be processed? Adjustment of status for other visa types can take months. I think the average time is 9 to 10 months or something. For DV lottery cases, the field offices are well aware of the timelines and the urgency on DV lottery cases, and I've seen cases that only became current in September with 30 days to go. They only became current in September. They only filed cases. I've seen cases only filed paperwork in September and still get processed in time. So it is possible to progress an AOS case quickly. They tend to not do it quickly at the beginning of the year, but towards the end of the year, when the deadline is looming, they rush cases through. Just like kids with homework, right? If you've got children, kids will wait until the last possible minute to do their bloody homework, and the government do the same thing. Hatim, if the judge, so you're talking about DV2020 visa holders, what they were talking about today with freezing visas, that would not require another medical, but reassurances normally require another medical and another set of fees, so it's expensive. So the freezing option, if it came to that, would be the better option. We'll have to see. Same thing, 317 as people on 3.4 or 316 or 320. Same thing I would recommend. Wait for the next few days. We've got a week to wait. Was Trump banned, now is Biden banned? Yeah, he owns it. I agree with you to an extent. He owns it. If he doesn't do anything about it, he owns it for sure. If he lets it go till 331, he owns it, right? I don't think for 1 minute he would extend it beyond then. But if he fails to deal with it, then yes, I'll agree with you. He owns it. Is there any chance that DV2021 will be processed as mission critical because we have lost a lot of time? That's one of the things that the lawyers are going to have to ask for. I've made that point to them on multiple occasions. This wording of mission critical means something in the sort of the prioritization of cases. There's mission critical and then there's emergency. In September, Judge Mehta ordered that the cases be treated as mission critical, and it saved our asses. We got 6,000 cases through, 5,000 of which were non-named plaintiffs, mostly non-named plaintiffs, right? But they moved really fast because they were treated as mission critical. So we may need that, but I think we're more likely to get maybe emergency designation rather than mission critical. So we'll see. We'll have to see how that goes. Or we just get permission that some number of visas will be reserved and that processing will continue until October, November, December of next year. But then that has a knock-on effect to DV 2022 as well. So, at some point this has got to stop, right? We've got to get this done. My wife is 17 weeks pregnant and also a DV 2021 winner, and at the time of May she will be around 30 weeks pregnant. Will there be any problem in issuing or traveling to USA if you get the visa? Okay, so when you get the visa, you'll be given 6 months to enter the country, so you won't have a problem. You're not going to get a visa before May, no matter what your number is, or your country, or anything else like that. You're not going to get an interview before then. So you know, she'll be 30 weeks in May. Okay, so you'll have 10 more weeks or 2 months. So once the baby is born in your own home country, you can then come to the USA. You can also travel. You might be able to travel before the baby is born, but I wouldn't. Personally, I don't think you're supposed to travel in that last few weeks of pregnancy. So I would say that you would then be waiting to travel, have the baby aboard wherever you are, and come in, within the 6 months. Oh, that's nice. Muhi Aldin Ali. Okay. Thank you for your following me. I appreciate that. It's been a long time since the last live. Yeah, I hope everything is all right. It's been fine, no problems. I'm sorry I haven't been online. I've been very busy at work. That's basically what's been going on. And there's not been much to say, actually. AOS, rather low number. Yeah, we talked about that. 26th will expire. What should we do? Right. So you're an important one. So somehow you've got a February 26th expiry date. You absolutely need to be contacting your embassy now. It took about 3 days for the case that I know of to get negotiated and cleared up. So the embassy will have to contact the Department of State in Washington, D.C. And depending on where you are in the world, that might be some overnight, confusion, etc. So if I were you, I would send an email to your embassy referring to the fact that you are aware, because of the lawsuit today, that a national interest exception has been agreed and issued for a case in the Netherlands and one other case that you've heard of, and that you want the same treatment. It's, to be fair and equitable, you want the same treatment. And so their first reaction will be to say no. And so you need to say in your email that you really want them to contact the Department of State and point out the urgency. You want to start that process like now, because that might take a few days. So even though PP 10014 might be removed by then, you want to start that process now, okay? If you don't, if your English skills are not good and you're not good on how to craft that email, ping me. Here we go again. I hate saying my email address. Every time I say my email address, I get emails from people and I have to ignore them because, okay. So if you are struggling with how to write that email, BritSimon3@gmail, right? Send me an email, but only you, nobody else, please. I have to ignore emails because I just can't. I can't deal with the number I get. I get a lot of emails, and I just have to ignore them. So I'm just saying to Bazaba to email me if you need to. Okay. It's possible for my wife now. M1, she's Sudan. M1, I don't know anything about M1 visas. First time I apply, waiting for an announcement. Yeah, good luck. It'd be awesome if you could win the first time, right? Oh, first time was last year, and now you're waiting. Okay. First of all, thank you for what you're doing for people applying DV20. It could do, Knife. I think I just touched on that. There could be a roll-on impact if DV2020 is extended. Sorry, 2021. If DV2021 is extended, there could be an impact to DV2022, and there would be far less likelihood that DV2022 could get help from lawyers, etc., because by then most of the barriers will have been removed. So it is it's a problem. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Brits, I suppose you're not religious, but you're living proof of a guardian angel exists. Thank you. You're right. I'm not religious, but I respect other people's religions. You've got the perfect right to practice any religion you want. I'm just logically minded and can't resolve I can resolve. I have resolved the issues. I understand what happened. I can't resolve the issues between science and what really happened and religion. So yeah, that's why I'm not religious. So. But thank you for saying I'm a guardian angel. Anything good about 2021? Yes, good things. Rewind. Do you know if those two NIEs were requested by visa holders or the embassy itself? Yeah, so that's an interesting question, Bikash, and this is one of the reasons that I was cautious and excited about that. Yesterday, I sent a tweet saying feeling positive, and I didn't say anything more than that. And that's what I was feeling positive about. Is because I learned this information that it was being worked on, but it wasn't a done deal at that time, and I didn't want to compromise it in any way. As far as I know, it was a combination of events that happened. The selectee reached out to the embassy, sort of beginning to panic, but at that time, the embassy responded that they were working with Washington and that Washington were trying to work something out, not only for those cases, for her case, but for other cases too. That was the wording. That was the wording that they've used. And that was the indication to me, or the reason that it made me feel positive. I think they are working to resolve this for other cases too. And lo and behold, today they confirmed that there was at least one other case that they've issued an NIE for. And again, on the one that they issued it for, there is no justification. So other than saying, well, that person was going to lose their visa. Okay, so you've shown that you can be humane and help one person, then continue, help a few other people, a few thousand people. You're not going to get anywhere, Francisco, with asking for emergency interviews. You can try. There's no harm in asking. I've told some people to ask for that, but they're being rejected. They're just being told that KCC are not cooperating. It's just being rejected. So if you want, you can try, but it's probably going to be an exercise in frustration. Your visa's expiring, Anne, on the 14th, so you should be okay. I think people, Jules, who was on earlier, has got an early March expiry date. It's more worrying for her, obviously. I mean, you're all worried, I'm sure, but that's going to be a rush for her and for other people earlier in the month. By the 14th, I think things are going to be sorted out one way or the other, either by one of the lawsuits or by the government action or whatever. You're welcome, Shutan. At this rate, will adjustment of status cases filed so far be processed? Oh yeah. Adjustment of status cases, you're fine. It feels slow, but it's okay. It might take 3 or 4 months for adjustment of status cases, but it's okay. And you've got certain tools you can use because you're in the States. There's certain things you can do to accelerate adjustment of status case and get some help with that. I've done it myself. That's how I did my case. I was here on an H1 visa and adjusted status in the country. My spouse phone. Okay, so you'll be surprised how quickly the follow to join cases go. I've known cases, I think it was last year, there was an adjustment of status case that got approved on, I want to say like the 26th of September, something like that, 27th of September, very, very late. And the follow to join was approved the next day in the foreign country. So the follow to join cases are I-824, and they move very, very quickly. But to your point, if there was some sort of extension in time of processing past September 30th, they could be covered by that as well. But I think in reality, adjustment of status cases will be closed before September, and it doesn't take any time at all for the follow to join to be processed. You can do some things to accelerate that. You line up the interview and you engage with the embassy staff early. You let them know that it's coming, right? So you keep them fully involved. So when you have your field office interview, then the embassy are almost waiting for your spouse and at the door, and they've got no work to do. I mean, it's very, very simple. So they're very happy to help on those cases. It's normally very quick. Simon, there's a troll Trumpster account using your image to spread hate. You're kidding me. You're not. Send me details of that, Julia. I would love to see that. You know, I've seen all sorts of bullshit. There's people who get my blog and copy it to their website, and even set up donation accounts and that sort of thing to try and get donations, pretending to be me, or just blatantly copying my information and putting it out there as their own for whatever reason. But I haven't seen a Trumpster. I mean, that's funny that a Trumpster would do that. Making me out to be a Trumpster hater. That's funny. Yeah, please send me that, Julia. I'd have a giggle. What do you think about the government comments on a decision on PPE? I think it's going to happen. That's what I think about it. I think it's going to happen. Makia Aibi. I consent on these issues. Please, my visa will expire 11th of March. So what can I do? I think just hang on a few days. I think things are going to get clear. If you want to ask for the Cameroonian embassy for an NIE, you could start that. It doesn't harm you to ask, but I think things are going to get better in the next few days. My son's US citizen, 19 years old. He studied by himself. We can apply NIE because our immigrant visa expires on March 11th. Okay, so this that's awesome. I'm just reading the next message. That's awesome. I'll click that in a minute. My son is a US citizen. Yeah, okay. So the thing is that if your son was sponsoring you for a visa, you would have a logical justification why the visa that you're applying for should have a national interest exception granted for it. Because you're DV lottery, that's not to do with that sort of thing. And so, generally speaking, I believe the reason that they're not giving NIEs, or they haven't been given NIEs on DV lottery, is because the reason for the visa is not in itself logically qualifying, right, through work reason or through family reasons. But right now, they've just given NIEs to a couple of cases for no reason whatsoever. So, you can certainly apply. Absolutely. You can apply, particularly if you go ahead and apply, making the point that you need to be reunited with your son, and he's a citizen. Absolutely. That's argue as hard as you can. This one just made me giggle. Demea, he saw my face. He helped me back in 2015. Thank you. Well, I hope you're enjoying Atlanta. You should be going for your citizenship, by now. And I'm thrilled to see you back online. Thank you for stopping by and saying hi. So 2015, 6 years ago. I'm glad to know I helped in some way. But yeah, amazing. Small ripples in a pond, right? You can help people, and one day maybe Demaya will be a governor or a senator or music producer or whatever it might be. I don't know, but I believe that small bits of help to someone else creates a ripple on the pond, and you don't know what good is going to come from that. Should be awesome. I was already banned because PP 9645. Okay, so 9645 is the Muslim ban. So you were denied. I think you're saying you were denied because of the 9645. Who you're saying how was already banned? I think you mean who was already banned. Have no visa to expire. If you're DV2020, then and we get the Gomez case, then you should be able to reopen your case and get them to reconsider your case, because they've not only dropped the Muslim ban, but they said when they revoked it, the wording says that past cases are reviewable. They can reopen a previously denied case that was denied because of the Muslim ban. That, I believe, can't go back to 2017, 2018, 2019 cases that were denied for that reason, because the years have already expired. But if the Gomez case reopens our opportunities to complete DV 2020, then you would be able to ask the embassy to reconsider your case. So get ready for that, okay? Okay, so Ash, you So yeah, so you asked if you should send document, they gave you the go-ahead. Okay, that's good. So there's a good point. So for the people asking, like Akaki earlier, should you be sending in documents? Maybe just email and ask, do you want my documents now? And maybe you'll get a positive result, similar to what Ash is describing there. I love the profile picture there, Ash. Looks a bit similar to my dog. Ina Padilla, in the Q&A, you talked about an email that DV 2020 visa holders with less than 6 months of expire should send to the embassies to try and get more time. Where can I find it? There was this suggestion, not suggestion, but a request from the, it came from Jesse Bless. I'm trying to think if I published it on my blog or on my Twitter feed. If you've got Twitter, I'm sure I talked about it on Twitter, but you can also search for the user Jesse Bless, who is the lead attorney on the Gomez case. You can go there, where they you can go to his Twitter feed, and he described people, asking for that. If not, ask your question again on my blog, and I'll find the information for you. Okay. Yeah, you'd already been asked to send them. Yeah, good point, Ash. So you were asked to send them earlier. Okay, so that makes sense. But at least you got some reaction from KCC. That's good. Okay, guys, a couple more questions, and I'm going to have to call it a day. Let's do an OC one. Not submitted DS260 yet, but I do plan to do so over the weekend. My number is below the cutoff for March interviews. There's an interview before 30th of 9, 2021, likely. It's a question of when they start interviews. The advantage you've got is that OC, Australia and New Zealand, handled the COVID crisis better than most countries, obviously. Were able to because of their geography, but also because of their mindset, and they just got on with it, right? They were told we're going to have a lockdown for 2 weeks. It'll be brutal, but they just got on with it, and and they accepted the rules. Whereas here in America, everyone was told put your mask on. No, I don't want to. It makes me look ugly. I can't breathe. Or we're on lockdown. No, I've got my freedoms. Absolute bullshit. So now we've got nearly 500,000 people dead here. Because people won't follow the flipping rules, and you swore there. But anyway, because I don't know when interviews will start, I can't really tell you, when you're going to get your interview or if you're going to get your interview. But I think it's, to use your word, I think it's likely you will. You're already current. You should be fine. I can't imagine the year would go so badly that we wouldn't get some interviews through. Yeah, we'll see. Would KCC start sending 2NLs for people who have received the confirmation that they're adding the documents? They will send 2NLs for the cases that are ready for scheduling. So if you've sent your DS260 in, if you've been asked for your documents and you sent them in, and if you've received a letter that says something, or an email that says something like you're ready for scheduling, we've received all your documents and you're ready for scheduling. If you've received that email, then yes, as long as your number is current, you'll get scheduled when they start scheduling interviews, and that means that you'll get the 2NL, right? The ban ends on 31st March. Will it probably start interviews around 10th of April? Yeah, no, it doesn't work like that. So the ban would have to end earlier, because if it went until 31st of March, and if the ban was used as a reason to not send 2NLs, then they will not even send the 2NLs until after the ban, which is April, and that's June interviews, right? So if the government rescind the PP10014 at the end of this month, then we've got a chance of getting 2NLs in March, which would be for May interviews. Otherwise, we're talking about June interviews. So yeah, that's how that works. No court decision today for the case, just more talking. And as I warned people this morning and previously, it's, we don't expect a quick answer from the court cases. No, you should not. Total Dental, you was asking, should you risk it and travel to the United States this weekend to see if if you can enter? We're a family of 4 with 2 kids, 12 and 5. Absolutely not. Don't try and do that. That would be daft. You probably wouldn't be allowed on the plane. And you've got over a month to wait. And there's lots of things going on. Why the hell would you go through that pain and trouble? Absolutely not. Look after your kids, stay at home. I understand it's frustrating, but don't get on the plane. Don't try and do that. Since the beginning of the year, they really stepped up the level of diligence in stopping people at the border. So a few people that had made it onto the plane were stopped at the border. There might have been some cases, I'm actually not aware of any, but there might have been some cases that actually did get into the country, but in general, things were tightened up at the beginning of the year. Sudhir is asking the famous questions. We want to ask personal questions. So almost all the questions that people ask me, can be answered in a public forum, and I do that on my blog because that way, when I answer one person's question, other people can benefit, right? But if you're absolutely convinced that the question you have has to be asked personally, privately, then you can email britsimon3@gmail.com. But just so you know, I just literally ignore questions that I believe should not have been asked privately. I have to. I don't even respond to them because it's almost like rewarding the bad behavior. So I can't do it. I take a quick scan of those emails and I go to the next, and I just ignore them. So please don't ask me something that you can anonymize, right? If you can ask me a question in a way in my blog anonymously, or some sort of anonymized way, don't give personal information. I rarely need personal information to be able to answer a question. Then do that. Who has a chance to have one of the 9,000 visas? I get this question every day. I can't say who will be getting those visas. There's no way to predict that. You'll have to wait and see. And it's not 100% certain we get all the 9,000 visas, or that it's only 9,000 visas. There's a lot of things to go, before that's done. Okay, last question, because you've asked many times before many things. Ethiopian nation, nationality, song and movies, because it's such a catchy name. Brits, how about those? Our documents are ready and waiting for the 2NL, stuck in KCC. We hope we have a chance for the 9,095. Similar question. Again, I can't really, I can't predict anything about that. We don't know when that's going to be worked out. Okay, I'll have to call it a day there. It's been a long session, so I'm sorry if it's been dragging on, but I do like to try and answer these questions. I enjoy these Q&A sessions to try and directly answer some of the questions. I think I know the questions you're going to answer, but every once in a while I get a question that I truly haven't considered, and I'll try and answer that too. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and keep well, keep warm, and fingers crossed for the next week. Let's hope we hear some good news. Okay. All right then. Bye bye everyone. Bye.